At 1:20 in the morning, a grenade landed in his trench. He picked it up and threw it back. A second one landed. He threw that back too. The third one went off in his hand. He had 4 hours of fighting left. That is number 3 on this list. 7 times, an army arrived somewhere narrow and found one person standing in it who had decided that was far enough. Number 7. Horatius Cocles. Rome had just thrown out its last king. The king, understandably annoyed, came back with an Etruscan army. The Roman defenders took one look at the size of it and did what any reasonable person would do, which was run. There was one wooden bridge across the Tiber into the city. If the Etruscans crossed it, Rome was finished that afternoon. Horatius went and stood on it. This is less mad than it sounds, and it is the reason every story on this list looks the way it does. A bridge is narrow. An army on a bridge cannot use its numbers. It can only send people forward 2 or 3 at a time, which turns an army into a series of individual fights, which is a completely different problem. And he shouted at the engineers behind him to start cutting the bridge down while he was still standing on it. They did. You can decide for yourself how reassuring that must have been. 2 other men stayed with him at first. When the timbers began to give, he sent them back and kept the bridge on his own. It came down behind him with him still on the wrong side of it. Livy says he then went into the Tiber in full armor and swam home. Rome gave him a statue and as much land as he could plow in a day. Historians have argued about this one for 2,000 years. The sources are late, and Livy was writing to make a point about Roman virtue. Treat it as the story Rome told about itself, which is its own kind of evidence. Number 6. Benkei. 12th century Japan, and a family disagreement is being settled the traditional way, which is to say one brother is now shogun and the other is being hunted across the country. The hunted brother was Minamoto no Yoshitsune. Traveling with him was a warrior monk named Benkei, who by every account was enormous, heavily armed, and not remotely interested in the quiet and contemplative life. They were finally cornered at a residence on the Koromo River. Yoshitsune went inside to perform ritual suicide with dignity. Benkei went and stood in the doorway. The attackers could not get past him, so they stopped trying to get past him and started shooting arrows instead. He stayed where he was. Eventually the arrows stopped, and nobody moved, because the enormous man in the doorway was still standing there. When somebody finally worked up the courage to walk close enough to look, they found he had been dead for some time. He had simply not fallen over. This is called the standing death of Benkei, and it is a legend. It appears in a literary account written well after the fact. In the tradition of making warriors larger than life, there is no contemporary record of it. It has been retold in Japan for 800 years anyway, which tells you something about which stories a culture decides to keep. Number 5. Dian Wei. Dian Wei was the bodyguard of the warlord Cao Cao, and he appears in the records of the 3 kingdoms, which is an actual historical chronicle rather than a poem. In the year 177, a general who had recently surrendered to Cao Cao decided he had made a mistake and attacked a camp at night. Cao Cao needed to get out. Getting out meant getting through the gate. Dian Wei went and stood in it. The gateway was narrow, which meant only a few men could come at him at once, which meant the fight lasted a very long time. The chronicle says his weapon broke and he kept going with what was left of it. It says he was wounded more than 10 times. It says he killed a great many men and did not move. Cao Cao got out. Dian Wei did not. Cao Cao reportedly wept more over Dian Wei than over his own son, who had also died that night. Make of that what you will. The records of the 3 kingdoms is a chronicle compiled in the century after the events, from court documents and testimony. That is not a court transcript, and chroniclers had patrons to please, but it is a different order of evidence from a poem, and this is roughly where the list stops being stories and starts being paperwork. Number 4. Alvin York. York did not want to be there at all. He was a farmer from Tennessee who had had a religious conversion a few years before the war, and when the draft came he applied for exemption as a conscientious objector. It was refused. He appealed and it was refused again. In the end it was turned down on the grounds that his church was not a well-recognized sect, which is a striking thing for a county draft board to be ruling on. So the man who did not believe in killing was drafted anyway, sent to a training camp in Georgia, and slowly argued into it by officers who at least took the objection seriously enough to sit down and debate scripture with him. He is also worth being careful about. because the popular version has him doing what follows entirely alone, and the actual record does not. Here is what happened. A patrol of 17 Americans was sent to deal with German machine guns that had pinned down their battalion in the Argonne. The patrol got behind the German line, surprised the group of soldiers, and took them prisoner. Then the machine guns on the hill turned around and opened up on them. 9 Americans went down. The survivors were stuck guarding prisoners in the open. York was left facing the guns more or less by himself. He had grown up shooting in Tennessee. He got into a position where the gunners had to come at him along a line, and he worked his way down that line with a rifle. The Medal of Honor citation credits him with killing 25 enemy soldiers. When a German officer emptied a pistol at him and missed with all of it, the officer offered to surrender the position. York and the 6 other survivors then walked back to American lines with 132 prisoners. His brigade commander is said to have looked at the column arriving and remarked that York appeared to have captured the whole German army. York said he had only got a few of them. 32 machine guns were taken out of that hill. So, not alone. He was one of 7 men left standing, and the prisoners were escorted by all of them. But the part where the guns were silenced was very much him, and that is the part the citation is about. Number 3. Lachhiman Gurung. A rifleman of the 8th Gurkha Rifles, holding the most forward trench of his platoon on the west bank of the Irrawaddy, with 2 other men. The forward post is the one nearest the enemy. It exists to be hit first, so the rest of the company gets warning. It is not a job you are given because somebody dislikes you. It is a job you are given because the whole position depends on it holding. At 1:20 in the morning, at least 200 Japanese infantry attacked. The most forward trench got the worst of it, which is exactly what it was there for. A grenade landed in the trench. He threw it back. Another landed. He threw that back as well. The third exploded as he was picking it up. It took the fingers off his right hand, shattered the arm, and wounded him in the face, the body, and the right leg. Both of the men with him were badly wounded and out of the fight, so he was alone, with one working hand, in the trench nearest the enemy. He loaded and fired his rifle left-handed, not for a few minutes, for 4 hours. The London Gazette citation says he waited calmly for each attack, and met it with fire at point-blank range. He shouted at them between attacks to come and fight him. 4 hours is the part people skip past. It was not a rush of adrenaline and then it was over. It was the entire rest of the night, in the dark, wounded, reloading a bolt-action rifle one-handed, over and over, with no reason to believe anybody was coming. When it got light, the position had held, and 31 enemy dead were counted around his trench. He was awarded the Victoria Cross. He lost the hand and the sight in one eye and lived another 65 years. Number 2. Audie Murphy. Before any of this, Murphy had tried to enlist in the Marines. They turned him down. He tried the Navy. They turned him down. He tried the paratroopers, who also turned him down. He was 5'5" and weighed about 110 pounds, and he was underage, a problem his sister solved by adjusting his paperwork. The army eventually took him. He finished the war as the most decorated American soldier of it, with something like 30 decorations. He was 19 when he took command of his company, mostly because the officers above him had run out. By January 1945, the company was down to 18 men from a normal strength of over 100. 6 German tanks and a couple of hundred infantry came out of the woods at Holtzwihr toward them. Murphy sent his men back to the tree line and stayed forward with a field telephone to direct artillery. An American tank destroyer near him took a hit and started burning. Its 50 caliber machine gun was still working. Murphy climbed onto the burning vehicle and started using it. This put him alone, elevated, clearly visible, and on top of something that was on fire and full of fuel and ammunition. He stayed there for about an hour, firing the machine gun with one hand and calling artillery corrections down the phone with the other, while German infantry worked toward him and the tanks came on. At one point, the artillery officer, on the other end of the line, asked how close the Germans were to his position. Murphy told him to hold the line and he would let him talk to one of them. A German squad got within about 10 yards. He stopped them as well. He was wounded in the leg and stayed. When the ammunition ran out, he climbed down off a vehicle that was still burning, walked back to his company, refused treatment, and organized a counterattack. The citation credits him with killing or wounding about 50 enemy soldiers and saving his company from being encircled and destroyed. He was 20 years old. Here is the part that does not usually make the list. Murphy came home and could not sleep. He had what they called battle fatigue then and what we call post-traumatic stress now, and he had it badly for the rest of his life. What? And he talked about it. In public, in interviews, at a time when essentially nobody did, and specifically so that the men coming back from Korea and later Vietnam would be handled better than he had been. He pushed the government to treat it as an injury. The most decorated American soldier of the Second World War spent a good part of his later life telling anyone who would listen that soldiers come home damaged and that there is nothing shameful in it. Of everything on this list, that one probably took the most nerve. Number 1. Dipprasad Pun. This one is recent enough that the paperwork is a matter of public record, which is what makes it my favorite on the list. September 10th, Helmand Province. Acting Sergeant Pun of the Royal Gurkha Rifles was on sentry duty on the roof of a small compound checkpoint. There were 3 other Gurkhas inside, asleep. He heard digging below the position. Insurgents were planting explosives at the gate. When he moved to look, the attack came from every direction at once. Accounts of how many attacked vary between about 12 and 30. Whichever number you take, it was all of them and one of him. So, he used everything on the roof, in roughly the order he could reach it. 250 rounds through the machine gun, 180 from his rifle, 6 normal grenades and 6 phosphorus ones, and a claymore mine. Then he ran out. A fighter was already climbing over the parapet. Pun picked up the tripod of the machine gun and hit him with it. He later said the sandbag he grabbed first turned out to be a bag of sand, which was no use, so he moved on to the tripod. That is the whole tactical reasoning, and honestly it is hard to improve on. The position held. The 3 men sleeping inside woke up in a compound that was still theirs. He was awarded the Conspicuous Gallantry Cross. His commanding officer called it the bravest thing seen in the battalion across 2 hard tours. There is a pattern in these, and it is not really about courage. Armies are built out of numbers. Numbers need somewhere to spread out. Every one of these happens somewhere that numbers do not work. A bridge, a doorway, a gateway, a trench, a rooftop. Put an army in a narrow enough place and it stops being an army. It becomes a queue. And every so often, the person at the front of that queue meets somebody who has quietly decided that the line ends here. The other pattern is quite reverse. The other pattern is quieter. 4 of these 7 were still alive the next morning, and not one of them described it afterwards the way the citizens do. Murphy could not sleep. Gurung lost a hand and an eye, and lived another 65 years with it. York spent the rest of his life trying to build a school, and mostly refusing to sell the story. The bridge is the famous part. The 65 years afterwards are the part nobody makes a film about. Which one of these did you already know? And which one do you think we got wrong? Tell me below.